Uh, Welcome to Connecticut Economic Development Week. My name is Joel Rinebold. I'm Director of Energy at the Connecticut Center of Advanced Technology. I'll be your moderator for the presentation, Renewable Energy in the Real World. We have some fabulous panelists here. Paul Whitescarver, who is Executive Director of the Southeast Connecticut Enterprise Region, Rick Mullins, who's Director of Infinity Hydrogen, and Paul Corey, President and CEO of B&E Energy. If I could, I want to remind everyone this is being recorded. And if I could ask Paul Whitescarver, Captain Whitescarver, if you could just give us a minute on your bio. So, and I'll move over to Rick and Paul Corey, after which we'll go into some more detailed presentations. After the presentations, we'll have some time and opportunity for Q&A. We'll do this from the chat box, the chat room. So if you have questions, type in your questions into the chat, and we'll try to pick them up as we go along. So let me go back for a minute and go to Paul Whitescarver. Paul, could you just give a quick intro to your background?
Sure. Paul Whitescarver. I'm a retired Navy captain. I did 39 years in the United States Navy, all submarines. I retired in 2019, and I picked up the mantle for SeCTer, or the Southeastern Connecticut Enterprise Region, just last year as the executive director. We're an economic development district in the southeastern part of the state, and we do regional economic development for southeastern Connecticut.
Thank you, Paul. Moving on to Rick Mullins from Infinity. Rick, if you could just give us a 1-minute bio.
Yes, sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Rick Mullins. I'm the Business Development Director at Infinity Fuel Cell and Hydrogen. I'm a graduate of Central Connecticut State University, master's degree in electrical systems, undergrad in technology education, and a master's in organizational management. Previous to joining Infinity, I spent 23 years managing the Institute of Technology and Business Development at CCSU in downtown New Britain.
Thank you, Rick. If we could move on to Paul Corey for a quick bio.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Paul Corey, I'm with B&E Energy, and we have Connecticut's only onshore wind farm in the state. I've been in energy about 25 years now. Started out as a regulator back when I worked closely with Joel, one of the true champions of renewable energy in the state. And I'm also an attorney. I used to work for Brown Rudnick, and I actually still do some legal work with of counsel with West Group Law. And we primarily represent municipalities in New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and a few in Connecticut. I think that's about it, Joe.
Paul, thanks very much. And for me, I'm as I said, Joel Rinebold. I'm Director of Energy at the Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology. Some of our focus areas, our topics include renewables, hydrogen, fuel cells, microgrids, and how to make it advanced manufacturing for these advanced energy technologies being made with their supply chain here in Connecticut for export to global markets. Full disclosure, I am both friends and colleagues with all of the panelists here, so I'm absolutely pleased to be working with, again, my friends and colleagues again. So let me do this. Let's back up and go back to Paul, Captain Whitescarver, to provide us with a quick presentation on what his group does and where he sees renewable energy in the real world. Paul.
Hold on, let me see. Do you see the screen?
Yep, you're up.
All right, hold on. Let me do it right here. Yeah, so, renewable energy, wind, it's happening. What you see is a picture of all the lease sites by BOEM across the East Coast. And if you looked in the New England area, you'd note that we have a much greater shelf to put all those windmills on. So When you have a national mandate of 30 gigawatts, that's a considerable amount of renewable energy. So what we did at SeCTer was there came an opportunity for us to apply for a grant through the EDA, through the Build Back Better Regional Challenge. And we wanted to harness the assets that we had in the area to do that. So one of the things that's happening in New London is there's this great investment in the state pier, roughly about 250 million, with 70 million coming from private match, i.e. Eversource and Ørsted. Park City Wind, Revolution Wind are investing. We talked about Ørsted here in New London. Park City Wind or Avangrid in Bridgeport is also creating a place where we can, assemble and take out to sea the wind turbines, albeit on a little bit smaller scale. Connecticut has an existing defense and manufacturing base through Sikorsky and also Electric Boat. We also have the Eastern Workforce Investment Board, which is somewhat of a model for the rest of the state and now being harnessed by the state through the governor's initiative. And we also have University of Connecticut here at Avery Point. So if you wanted to think how we can create jobs, we need to really think about what we're going to do with what we've been provided with the assets that we do have in the state and we do have in the region. So it also creates this ability for us to think about, okay, if 30 gigawatts of wind, let me put that in perspective for you. That's 2,000 to 2,500 windmills that are going to be assembled and possibly coming out of New London, Bridgeport, and hopefully domestication of our supply chain here in the state. All the suppliers right now are in Europe or in China. The idea is to bring them here to Connecticut so that we can harness it and create a domesticate our supply chain. It's good about it because it's equitable. In my region and including Bridgeport, there are 13 of the top 25 distressed communities. So if you look at a manufacturing, the average manufacturing wage is roughly 95 to 105,000. The average hospitality wage is considerably lower, 35,000 maybe to 40. So we need to close that gap. And one of the things to do that is, hey, let's create some type of economic engine. And we do that by the development of an offshore wind cluster. So what we provided to the EDA was we took 8 projects and we said, hey, let's turn 20 million into 60 million. So the 8 projects started the entire business cycle, so to speak. If you wanted to think about it, University of Connecticut, if we can help them invest in their research and development, we can help them with their incubation systems that they have at the University of Connecticut, maybe throw in some construction so we can build out a little bit of Avery Point and more of their campus and stores. What a great way to see businesses start and incubate and make sure that we can use the technology in the future. We also have, as I mentioned before, the Eastern Connecticut Workforce Investment Board. So let's invest in it. They've figured out ways to take a curriculum into our technical colleges, our 2-year colleges, our technical schools, into the high school with their youth manufacturing pipeline initiative, so that we make the workforce and we bring it here instead of having it over there in Europe. We also invested in site selection or site assessment. We said, hey, let's take the Council of Governments GIS systems and make it a digital dashboard so people can find the sites that may require some remediation because of environmental issues, make them available for the supply chain to come over here and be part of our cluster instead of the cluster in Europe. And then we have Business Park North, which Kevin Brown and Henry is on board with us today. But let's invest in it. Let's take some green space that doesn't require remediation and bring some companies in. And quite frankly, we had a pre-brief conversation about businesses coming into Connecticut. Business Park North has already got 6 companies that could be possible, wind supply chain investment that are already talking to Business Park North in Norwich, Connecticut. And then, we said, Joel, since you're so smart, how about helping us with the supply chain? So CCAT is part of that. So, and then we said, hey, let's take this cluster and let's expand it. Let's take a catchment here in the southeastern part of the state and make it a catchment for everything. So we're going to partner with Rhode Island and Massachusetts. So we have a joint marketing campaign to bring businesses and workforce to this area. So we're not competing against each other. So what a great opportunity for us. For SeCTer, we've already had several EDA sessions. And, to me, it looks very positive that we can turn that $20 million of committed match funds and turn it into a $60 million investment into Connecticut. That's what a cluster is about. That's what renewable energy is about. And, I'm kind of excited about it. The better part of this is, let's say we don't get the grant. We've already created a network of projects that are willing to work together through the last 3 months. And Joel can attest to that. And so can Henry. We worked with these folks. By and large, we're connected. And I think we can do that. And Advanced Connecticut is helping us. They're the engine that brings businesses to the state. So this is a great opportunity. And the state is involved in this too. Some of that 20 million is state investment into some of these projects. So that is what I like about renewable energy. Now, let me tell you a little bit about technology. So hopefully I'm not sharing my screen anymore. Ooh. Let me do this. Not sure why I can't get there. Well, anyway, look, can you, hey, Lisa, can you stop me sharing?
I don't appear to be able to.
Lisa, you should
I
be
will
able to
do-
just
I-
take rights away from everybody
Yeah,
else.
I just requested it, Paul. So
Yeah, I don't know why I can't find it on my screen. Oh, here it is. Oh, shoot.
I requested. I don't know if you see my request there.
Yeah. Yep.
Great.
Okay, so let me talk a little bit about technology before I turn it over to Rick. Behind me, you see some pictures of submarines. I commanded the USS Scranton, commanded the submarine base. So way back when, submariners needed to figure out, how can I stay submerged? Well, we figured out, one, I can make pure water out of seawater. And then if I take it through electrolysis through an oxygen generator, I can take pure water and through about 1600 amps of electricity, I can create or separate hydrogen and oxygen from water. Now me, I didn't need the hydrogen, so I just put that overboard. Oxygen we kept. But now we know that what Rick's going to go into is, hey, we can use that hydrogen for much more, part of the renewable energy cycle. So I think we're going to turn it over to Rick, and he's going to talk to us about hydrogen.
Paul, thanks very much. That was a fabulous presentation. And why don't we move over to Rick? We'll take some questions for you afterward. But Rick, if you're ready, you work for a company and you're part of a company that actually makes some of these hydrogen generators. Let's hear from you to see what you have in a way of commercial applications for this. Rick?
Thank you, Joel and Paul. That was the best explanation of electrochemistry 101 I've heard in a long time. Thank you very much. Folks, this is a technology that seems complex, but it's probably something you learned in elementary and middle school. But as Paul Whitescarver mentioned, this is about not service, but work, jobs, and economic development. And I would like to share with you how we at Infinity have contributed and are contributing to that economic growth in Connecticut. Next slide, please. Briefly, Infinity is an outgrowth of some of our companies right here in Connecticut. Our founder and president CEO, William Smith, was with PerkinElmer and UTC. In fact, he and I worked together in the late 80s and early 90s in this very space in technology. And since that time, Bill went on to grow and start Proton on-site gas. Following that, he started Infinity. We've been in business about 20 years. And in the last 12 months, we've grown from 20 to 30 employees, where we are providing electrolysis and fuel cells to the list of companies below. Basically, it has been NASA and the Navy. Our systems are not air-breathing systems. They're used in space and under the water. But recently, too, with the advent of commercial space programs, we're working in that area as well. Next slide, please. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but you can see that we started in 2002, as I mentioned earlier. We're on our 20th year. In 2005, we began delivering our first systems to NASA and the Navy, and we continue to evolve those proton exchange membrane fuel cells today. Those are our primary products, if you will, along with electrolyzers. Next slide, please. Here are examples of the high pressure electrolysis. And in addition to the standard electrolysis, our systems are also capable of doing both the electrolysis piece and the fuel cell piece. The electrolysis breaks down, as Paul Whitescarver mentioned, oxygen and hydrogen. The fuel cell makes electrical energy from those products. We've done this for some programs with the Marine Corps as well. You see that in the lower left-hand corner, which is a renewable X-Stora system. Next slide, please. Our company started as a study company and moved to a prototyping company for both NASA and the Navy. And most recently, we are now in demand spaceflight hardware from some of those very similar products. That is our primary mission, NASA, aerospace, and the defense markets. However, we are tracking the commercial products arena, and we are investing in that area right now with staff growth, process improvements, cost reduction, and higher volumes. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to get into this hydrogen market, and I'll be using slides from McKinsey & Company and Goldman Sachs here. These are not my charts. These are publicly available. But if you look at what the McKinsey report stated back in 2021, it showed progressive growth towards 69 gigawatts or 11 tons of hydrogen required to fulfill the goals and objectives globally. The Department of Energy, the US Department of Energy, issued an RFI in early 22, and thanks to Joel, he reached out to a number of us in the fuel cell consortium to address this. There's $8 billion available for hydrogen hubs, $1 billion to advance the supply chain electrolysis, much like Paul talked about in his area, and $500 million for advancing electrolysis. Following the submittal in March, Deep put on a session in April with all of us to talk about the direction that the Department of Energy is going with an RFP release, which we expect sometime mid to late this month. Next slide, please. When we look at hydrogen storage and batteries and so forth, when we see the requirements for energy over 1 megawatt, hydrogen storage makes sense. Next slide, please. Green hydrogen is the most preferable type of hydrogen because we're reducing our hydrocarbons significantly here. You drive a car with gasoline in it, and that's a hydrocarbon. And what we're really talking about here is taking the carbon out of the hydro and using that hydro. So you can look at this slide and see what a bull market scenario looks like, a base scenario looks like, and a bear scenario looks like when it comes to the production and use of green hydrogen. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk now specifically about the proton exchange membrane electrolyzers. There are multiple types of electrolyzers out there. We happen to be evolving the PEM membrane electrolyzers, which evolved from the Gemini space program, quite frankly, and has been used, as Paul Whitescarver talked about, on nuclear submarines. But you can use alkalines and you can use molten carbonate as well. But the PEM electrolyzer market is growing readily from 15 to 2020. Next slide, please. Let's take a look at the cost of this as well, because we know that these technologies are significantly different and have higher costs. However, the cost of the proton exchange membrane technology is dropping faster than the alkaline systems. And you can see that in the steepness of the curve to the right. Next slide, please. Here we could talk about the proton exchange membrane performance versus the alkaline. Its nearest competitor, but the proton exchange membrane wins out here because of its higher efficiency, its faster startup and stop capability. It has the ability to vary over load ranges. It is capable of a higher current density. Next slide, please. Obviously, with technology, we have challenges, but those challenges are being addressed. We're addressing the manufacturing cost of cell membrane assemblies. In fact, we responded to an RFI from DOE on that very subject. Access to natural resources for catalysts for the PEM and alkaline fuel cells is a challenge, but we're continuing to look at other materials, natural and otherwise, that could be used for these catalysts. Performance and scalability of the cell stacking. Many of these stacks have multiple cells in them, upwards of 100 cells at a time. And in order to get higher outputs, you need more cells in the stack. We also have to look at the hydrogen market and infrastructure, storage and distribution. You know, I could think about maybe over 100 years ago, a few guys sitting around a saloon, knocking a couple back after they tied up their horses at the hitching post and saying, hey, this gasoline thing, what are they going to do? Have a gas station on every corner? Hey, let's think about this. That was 100 years ago, but look where we are today. There is a gas station on every corner. There's a diesel fuel gas station as well. And now we have electrical charging stations. So the paradigm shift, as I could talk about below, needs to be made. It is being made, and we see it changing. Just this week alone, I'd like to hold on that slide for 1 second. Just this week alone, we saw the next evolution in Connecticut of the hydrogen market. Joel and I attended the Capital Clean Cities event sponsored by Toyota. They brought 2 of their hydrogen vehicles to Hartford, right off Jennings Road. And you can see the Mirai on the right and the Class 8-ton truck in the background, the bump. And that's how, on the left side, the fuel cell plant looks in a Mirai vehicle from Toyota. Next slide, please. What's been our role in the hydrogen hub? As I mentioned, Joel reached out to the coalition and asked for our inputs in early March on this. The industry consensus is Connecticut is still the fuel cell capital of the world. Dating back to the early 60s, we have been in this business substantially and physically producing fuel cells and electrolyzers in this space. There are other Connecticut producers as well. Nell Hydrogen, which is Proton, which our CEO started. Doosan, which now is partnered with High Axiom. Fuel Cell Energy, Skyry, and Precision Combustion. The other part of our effort has been to look at the supply chain in the hydrogen hub. Who's here? What technologies do they have? Our technology operates at 2000 PSI, which is high pressure, which is good for storage purposes and collecting the gas of hydrogen. We too have systems integration experience with regenerative fuel cells where we can run these electrolyzers and fuel cells in reverse and create the gases as Paul Whitescarver talked about, and utilization of both the oxygen and the hydrogen. We have 20 years of experience at Infinity dealing with studies, prototypes, and now production. We have an agile and growing workforce with an experienced leadership team and talented staff. One thing that I did share with Joel as we were putting together the Hydrogen Hub was the Great Plains Institute report, which came out in January of 2022. It identified 14 hubs recommended across 8 regions in the United States. Unfortunately, they didn't do a good job surveying New England. We were totally left off the list, and we need to all change that. We were also very pleased as a coalition to see Governor Lamont's press release of 3/24/22 announcing Connecticut's partnership with New Jersey, New York, and Massachusetts in developing a regional hub in response to the DOE RFI. Next slide, please. So yes, global hydrogen is the next energy frontier. I've shared here with you some articles that were very recent, published on this topic. And I'd recommend, if you are interested in learning more, you can see how this is impacting the globe when it comes to hydrogen production and so forth. I'd like to thank the EDCs, Tom Morano and Kevin Bielmeyer, Infinity's Chris Smith and Mark Sackler for help with this presentation. And my colleague from CCSU, Joel Rinebold, for his help at CCAT in preparing this presentation today. Thank you.
Rick, thanks very much for that very thoughtful presentation. Let me ask you one very quick question just before we move over to Paul Corey, and that is you've presented a very favorable position that Connecticut can occupy in terms of this advanced energy storage. What do you think the timing is, and what do you think the driver is? I mean, is it as Paul Whitescarver indicated, the offshore wind that'll be needing energy storage, and do we have the supply chain that can make this energy storage commercially for engagement, in this new clean energy storage industry?
Well, I think that as you and I and the members of the coalition have spoken about this, the fuel cell electrolyzer industry is going to be a contributor, probably not a primary leader when it comes to generating this energy. But we have the capability with some of the manufacturers in Connecticut to do this on the microgrid level, as well as peaking requirements to address load needs in the region and so forth. I think that, the best is yet to come. We're sticking our toe in the water here. We're evolving space and Navy technology, defense technology at the next level of commercialization. And I think that what is really going to make this work, as Paul pointed out, is that supply chain network and collaboration amongst the partners to put the right pieces in the puzzle together unselfishly, consistently, and in the best interest of the public, while growing our economy, making the hardware here and growing jobs in Connecticut.
Rick, thank you. And I'm sure we're going to have some more questions when we finish up. Those are good words of encouragement. Now I'd like to move over to Paul Corey. Paul Corey has the distinction of being the head of the company that built Connecticut's first and presently only commercial wind turbine, renewable energy wind turbine in Connecticut. So Paul, if you could come on and tell us about the development of this your facility in wind. Was it as easy as we all think it is? Everybody likes renewable energy. Everybody likes carbon-free energy. What were the real world challenges of developing your wind facilities?
Yeah, thank you very much, Joel. Thanks, everybody. Those were really impressive presentations on offshore wind, fuel cells, and hydrogen, part of the future, the renewable energy mix in Connecticut and throughout the country. Hopefully more and more of it. I'm just going to talk a little bit, as Joel mentioned, about our project. We are Connecticut's only wind turbine wind farm in the state. We're in Colebrook. It's in the northwest corner. It's basically the first town in Litchfield County. And we have 2 wind turbines. They're big. They're GE 2.85 megawatt turbines. The hub height which is the center of the turbine blades, is about 325 feet tall. Each blade itself is about 162 feet in length. So the tip height is well over 400 and it's well over almost 500 feet tall to the top of the blade once it's above the tower. Now I've been following energy in the state. I used to work at the Department of Public Utilities Control, and there's been a big push towards renewable energy. We started following it back in 2000, 2003, And in about 2005, 2006, I believe that myself and my business partner, Greg Zupkis, we believe that there was wind in Connecticut that was viable for commercial wind turbines. And we actually work closely with the Clean Energy Fund, now the Green Bank, Connecticut Green Bank, and others to verify and validate the thesis at the time that it could work, and it could work on a large scale. Where the wind is it's in the northwest corner in Connecticut on high elevation properties. So we actually started in 2008. We acquired the land. We put up wind measuring equipment, met towers, and we started the process. In and around 2010, we're on 80 acres of land. It's a great site on the outside of town along the main road. We started the process towards getting basically the siting council approvals for the project. It's a big investment. It takes a long time. Like all energy projects, there's a lot of competition out there, there's a lot of regulations and requirements that you have to meet. So it's a long-term investment. It's a strategy that you need to take. You have to try to partner with the state and various agencies that are involved in the process. And certainly one of the most important things is partnering with the local community, the first selectmen and mayors of the towns and cities. And we did that early on. And we spent a lot of time making sure the project was done right. And ultimately, it took time. There was some opposition. People didn't know what a wind turbine was. There was a lot of misinformation that was presented. There's a lot of people that say they support renewable energy, but they don't want it they don't want to see it. And whether it's a wind turbine on a ridge line or a solar field on a farm in eastern Connecticut. So there's always going to be some resistance, and we actually had a fair amount of opposition. What you don't see is the tremendous support that we had. People who complain about projects, they're vocal. They're calling, their first selectman or their mayor. They're calling the various officials. The people who support it, they just congratulate you and say, "Hey, great job. We're rooting for you." So it was a challenge. We got the approvals. There were court challenges. We had to actually go all the way up to the Connecticut Supreme Court. We prevailed. It took 8 years to get the project built. The two turbines started operations in 2015. But I could tell you that it was well worth the effort. It's a beautiful site. It's one of the nicest wind farms in the country. I've been to a lot of them, and I would welcome anybody on the call if they would like to come visit. We could certainly we'd be glad to give you a tour and show you the technology, the site, and everything like that. And one thing I would just point out is once the project got built, all of the opposition went away. We haven't had any complaints since the project began commercial operations, and that's saying a lot. In fact, my business partner Greg Zupkis always likes to say we actually have a tourism problem because so many people enjoy coming up to the site to view the turbines and spend time in the field and appreciate the value of what the renewable energy project is bringing to not only the community but the state as well. And the two wind turbines that we have produce enough power annually to power about 1,500 to 2,000 homes. There's only about 700 homes in Colebrook. So we're providing more than double the amount of renewable energy for the entire town. So we're basically, powering Colebrook and Norfolk with 100% green renewable energy with zero emissions. So what we are doing, the project was approved for 3 turbines. We're working hard We were close to getting the third turbine installed. We ran up against COVID like a lot of other folks. The state ended up getting shut down. We're going to get it built, and we're going to also add solar and batteries to the project. So what are the benefits real quick? We provide a tremendous amount of renewable energy in the town, a lot of jobs and economic development, not so much at the wind farm itself because it's a small project, but we definitely support a lot of other businesses. We have, technical people. We have contracts with GE. The turbines itself were purchased from GE, made in the USA, and we continue to do that. We're the highest taxpayer in the town, and like I said, there's just an awful lot of support for the project. I just have 3 comments, kind of aimed at economic development and people in various cities and towns across the state that are looking at energy. One, I would say that energy is a great industry. There's a tremendous amount of economic development that derives from energy projects. They're long-term, they're investments in the community, and in particular, renewable energy. So what I think 3 takeaways. There's a tremendous amount of support in Connecticut for renewable energy. There has been for 20 plus years now. But one thing that I've always said that could be done more and done better is focus on building the renewable energy in Connecticut. Too much of our charges on electric bills are spent for out-of-state projects that just deliver the renewable energy to the state, but you don't get any of the benefits in terms of jobs, economic development, property tax. And one thing the state also, one of the issues they talk about is income tax. And once a renewable energy project, that typically after the first 5 years, when the tax credits and depreciation are used, the projects will pay a lot of state income tax as well if they're located in Connecticut. So that's one focus I like to emphasize. The second is at the city and town level across the state. It's great, people support renewable energy, but there is going to be some opposition. It's Connecticut, it's New England, it happens. You could have the best project and the best location, and you're going to get some opposition. So I would just encourage everybody in economic development positions across the state to make sure the project is done right. But if and when there is opposition, to really stand behind the project and make sure that ultimately it's a long-term investment in the community and there's a tremendous amount of benefits. So it's worth the effort. And then lastly, I would just say, for developers out there, it's important to know the state. It's important to know the local communities where you're developing projects, and to really start at the beginning, use best practices, and make sure you're doing everything you can to develop the project the right way. So with that, Joel, I'll turn it back to you, and maybe there's some questions out there for some of the panel.
Paul, thanks. Great presentation. And, we all like to share your victory, and at the same time, we feel your pain.
Well, we couldn't have done it without you, Joel. Joel was a part of the team, and he was in there from day one, really encouraging us to move forward with the project, and was there every step of the way until we got it built. So we appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul. So there are some questions, and some of the questions are, what do we need to do? How do we need to, get around some of these challenges? And let me start with you, Paul. What do we need to do? Do we need to tighten up some of the state siting criteria? Do we need to have some kind of a federal appellate board? Do we need to have some of the municipalities better engaged with maybe identifying renewable energy, offshore wind in their plan of development or their zoning regulations? And, maybe some of the municipalities look for this. They want everybody wants the renewable energy, till it's in their backyard. Everybody wants the reliability. As you said, with Colebrook, these facilities are providing Colebrook all their power plus. And the jobs. Maybe some of these municipalities, really want to see the tax revenue from not only the project, but also some of the manufacturing, the advanced manufacturing associated with some of the project components. Paul, what do you think we need? Is it local work? Is there activities? Is it state? Or do we need something, coming in from Washington to say, this is part of the national policy and we need to have better siting?
Yeah, Joe, that's a really great question. And I think certainly at the federal level, support for renewable energy projects, primarily through tax credits, are a very important component of the overall economics. And also the longer those initiatives are in place would provide some certainty to the time it takes to get projects completed. But I think the emphasis really needs to be at the state level. As I said before, in Connecticut, I think there needs to be a much greater emphasis on building renewable energy projects in the state versus procuring renewable energy that is built in other states in New England and Canada and so forth. So I think that's a critical piece. Certainly, the local communities, the cities and towns across the state, they have a big role in seeking out renewable energy, supporting it, working with state officials and so forth. And really, the cluster concept of having locations within a city where renewable energy developments could take place and perhaps streamline the process is something to think about, because nobody knows the local community like the first selectmen, the mayors of the towns, their economic development teams, and to really identify the right locations for energy projects it would be a very significant step in opening up those communities to development. And I would say third, and you hit on it, Joel, the regulations, that process for siting, for getting approvals for any energy project, it's extensive. There's way too many requirements, multiple agencies, and the ability, unfortunately, for people who oppose renewable energy, they use the courts and the system to delay projects, and delays kill projects. And people who make a living, certain law firms and so forth, that's what they do. They understand that, and it makes it more difficult to get things built. So I would encourage the state to also look at ways to streamline the approval process, and minimize the length of time that it takes to get through it, and minimize the ability for opposition to challenge and delay projects indefinitely. So, I think that is something that should be looked at and encouraged to allow for, if a local community wants a renewable energy project in their town or city, it shouldn't be held up for years because you have to go through a state approval process that's subject to, you know, a 6 to 12 month hearing process, multiple appeals, and multiple ways to challenge those decisions. So I think those three things would go a long way, Joel, in helping develop more renewable energy in Connecticut.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for that, those comments, and also thank you for hanging in there in Connecticut and making Connecticut a cleaner state with more energy reliability. Let me turn to Paul Whitescarver, and you've just heard Paul Corey with you know, a tale of, we all want the clean energy, we all want control of our climate, but it's easier said than done, and a lot of the challenges lie at the state and the local level. Paul Whitescarver, do you think there's a need, or do you think there's value, or what do you think you can do to help out with education or the process to bring some of these projects into the community? And moreover, maybe right in your alleyway there is, do you think there's enough of information out there to indicate that there will be an opportunity for local jobs if we do it right? There will be an opportunity for the supply chain to grow and to provide revenue and investment in these communities. Do people know, do your folks in the towns, are they clearly aware that this is an opportunity for a homegrown renewable energy industry?
Yeah, I think they do. You know, obviously more panels like this would get the information out there. So, you know, we try to get around to all of our local municipalities and talk about the great things that SeCTer is doing. Just want to comment a little bit about, you know, site selection. You know, BOEM controls all the site selections out in the ocean. And I was doing some calculations. You know, if you have a 325-foot windmill, you would be able to see it on the horizon roughly about 20 nautical miles or 40,000 yards away. Okay, so most of the ones that are going off the coast are in excess of 20 nautical miles, which is good for us. You know, obviously, if you're in a hotel, you'll probably be able to see the top of it. But, you know, that was the big complaint about the 5 windmills that went off of Block Island. And, you know, nobody wanted to look at them and so forth. But a majority of the windmill lease areas are well off the coast. So you know, they're kind of going to be out of sight. You know, the one hesitation there might be the fishing industry and you know, all the transmission lines that have to come in to shore could be an issue. But I think by and large, most of the developers and most of the people that are trying to work that out are working with the local fishermen to figure out how to make everybody happy. And they are contributing money to the fishing foundations to make sure that they are made whole, even if it's not going to look like it's going to be good for them. So that's good on the development side. You know, what we've seen, if you think about the state of Connecticut, I think they have power purchase agreements of 2 gigawatts of power from both Revolution Wind and Park City Wind to be part of the purchase of electricity in our area. And plus, they've contributed a great deal to bring the industry just by their investment in the state pier and also their investment with our projects. But both of the developers signed letters of intent with the state and DECD to make sure that they did put pockets of their money in individual sections. I know, Joel, you're working with Avangrid with part of your work plus part of our work. They've invested in workforce investment. They're investing in Yukon, you know, so, you know, I think we're opening up the aperture. You know, RT Brown, who's on the call, he just went down to the offshore wind forum that was in New Jersey. You know, we're heading down to DC, and I know that Advanced Connecticut is hitting the trail hard. I think Saranda is going to like 30 trade shows over the next several months, just on the specific idea of bringing renewable energy businesses to the state. You know, so I think, as far as the state and local governments here where we are in the southeastern part of the state, we're doing a great job. Another little story, back to Rick and his hydrogen and microgrids, on the base, I put 8 megawatts of fuel cell technology on the base with the sole idea of having a microgrid so that I can island off in case of an emergency and maintain that power. And Groton Utilities has 5 microgrid areas in their 54 megawatt distribution system. So there's lots of great work out there in the energy sector that's going on that that is, the more and more people get on panels like this that talk about it and share ideas. I think that's the best way that we can make sure that cluster development, from our perspective, is a home run.
Oh, thanks very much for that. So not too long ago, we ran an in-plan, an economic impact model for the state of Connecticut for some of the energy storage technologies. And some of the numbers include 600 million in revenue and investment,
Yep.
2,800 total jobs, that's direct, indirect, and induced, and 600 supply chain companies. I'm going to ask you, Paul, what do we need to amplify that and get that built up? And then I want to turn to Rick and say, you're one of those companies. What do you need to expand? So, Paul, what do we need to take some of those 600 companies? And it includes maybe, I'm going to say about 10 OEMs, original equipment manufacturers. How do we get them engaged so that we can see some of this, the value proposition? I think as Paul Corey was referring to, made in Connecticut, cited in Connecticut.
So was that directed at me?
Sure, why not? You're
Okay.
it, tag.
Yeah, so, our conversations with 3 developers right now, Equinor, Avangrid, Ørsted, Eversource. We just got contacted last week by some German companies that want to come here, and we are putting them in contact because they'd like to have office space here so they could see what is available, what is the art of the possible to bring these supply chains to our area. And I think, one of the vice presidents at Eversource said, the state of Connecticut needs to roll out the red carpet for these people, whether that be tax incentives or so forth. And I'm not the tax incentive, expert. They're probably more economic experts here that could probably talk about that. But I think we're getting there. I think we're slow to the breach, so to speak. I think Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New York are way ahead of us. And we have some catch up to do, but it's not unforeseeable. I mean, the first, the pier won't be ready till the beginning of 2023. The first windmills will move out early spring. I think once people see that we are committed to this industry and putting the windmills out on the shelf, they'll come, because the cost of bringing those parts and pieces from Europe or from China is gonna, that cost benefit being here would be much better than having to transverse it all the way across either the Atlantic or the Pacific.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. So I also want to reinforce thanks to Advanced Connecticut, Advanced CT for some of the terrific work they've been doing, with bringing in some of these companies, exploring the marketing and the opportunities. So kudos, to Saranda and Company and Lisa for all the work you've been doing. Let me turn to Rick. Rick, so you're part of that supply chain. What is your biggest burden to or challenge to expand in Connecticut? Is it cost of your product? Is it proven reliability? Is it stronger policy for environmental performance, or stronger policy for economic development, creation of jobs in Connecticut? Rick Mullins, what do you need to expand your company and your business?
Joel, you summed it up really very, very well there. All of the above. And quite frankly, I really have to compliment the 2 Pauls for the wonderful job they did today in explaining their industries and the impacts in their regions and so forth. I think we really nailed that renewable energy in the real world. It's here, it's happening, and we have major players in Connecticut contributing to that. And I was listening and I thought, what's the real value equation here? And what I came to conclude is that renewable energy is long-term economic growth in our state. It builds a supply chain locally. We heard that up in the northwest corner. We've heard that down in the southeast corner of the state. Workforce development is meaningful jobs. These are all jobs that are highly technical, skilled professionals. This is what our future workforce needs to stay in Connecticut and help us remain competitive on a global market, because we can certainly export these, as you and I have talked with other players around the world about some of our technologies. These projects add to the communities. They build on what exists. They don't take it down. They build it up and bring nuances to a community that didn't see these things or have these resources before. They push technology over the edge. You talk about manufacturing. We are a manufacturer. We take raw material from the ground and we produce a finished good that serves many people in many different markets and spaces. So, yes, we need this advancement in these technologies and the cost reductions that come forth from some of the grants and resources that are becoming available for advancing this technology. And we all benefit from that. On a final note, and Joel, maybe you can elaborate on this. My service before in the past 23 years has been in state government. And we've heard of cluster initiatives in numerous levels. Some worked, some didn't work so well. However, it sounds to me as though there's a significant need, and our governor, the legislature, DECD, and DOL need to hear this, for a renewable energy cluster in Connecticut that could be housed at like a CCAT and with the energy coalition, if you will, to help us, the manufacturers, help us, the service providers, help us, the wind energy people, further our message, as well as grow our businesses, our core businesses with, as you heard, tax incentives and grants, and most importantly, keeping our young talent here and helping to grow our communities on all these foundations.
Rick, great information. I'm very much in agreement. We've got 1 minute left, and I've got a question, and this is a presentation, renewable energy, real world, and we've got a lot of municipal officials. So we've got municipal officials indicated they've got interest in renewable energy, where to site it, how to bring it in. What do municipalities need to do in terms of siting? They've got Branford has got some solar farms built. What else do they need to do? Is it about the facilities? Is it about bringing in supply chain companies? Is it about pipes and wires? What do we need to do? I'm going to give everybody 10 seconds each to give me your best. What do the munis need to do? Rick, you're up. Why don't you tell us what's your quick response to Branford and the other municipalities?
Well, I think that most importantly here, I have not been strong in the siting arena, but it's awareness and the benefits that it brings to their community, and helping our legislative leaders understand that, and our municipal economic development directors understand that, to send that message to Hartford and beyond.
Great. Paul Corey, what do you think the munis need to do?
Thank you, Joel. I think that there's two things that communities can do. One would be to build a better partnership and with state officials, and let state officials, elected officials, governor's office, know that there's a strong level of interest in expanding renewable energy in those local communities, and work to partner with the state to address the kind of the regulatory issues that need to be streamlined, and whatever other practices, you build people, you bring in people from different aspects, the developers, the city, the state, and everybody needs to work together to figure out a better way to get these things done in Connecticut, in the local cities and towns. The other thing I think is very important for the local communities is to bring on some talent, go out there, bring on an expert like you, Joel, to help get things done, bring on competent legal counsel, and with the intent and with the purpose of getting the projects done and done right. I see it all the time. Too often, the cities and the local officials, they mean well. It starts out very productive. They end up they issue an RFP, they bring on a third-party consultant, and the consultant just puts up obstacles. And I think that needs to be better leadership from the towns and cities with the purpose of getting whatever projects that they're looking at done, completed, and done right. So those would be my two suggestions on that.
Good suggestions, Paul. Thanks. Paul Whitescarver, very quick response. What do the munis need to do? How do they bring in the renewable energy, the jobs, the value proposition?
First thing you need to know is what you have to offer. What sites do you have in your municipality that would meet the requirements of a supplier coming in? Go to your planning and zoning commission, go to your planners, use your GIS systems, know what you got. If you don't know what you got, you don't know what you can offer.
Good comment. Thanks. I want to thank everyone who was involved in putting this together, certainly including our panelists. I want to turn this back over to Lisa to do some housekeeping, close this up, and I think you can help us understand the recording will be available somewhere, somehow. If there's additional questions from some of the municipalities or other participants, I think they can get that information through you.
Correct. And I actually also put Saranda Velika's email in the chat. As you have mentioned, Saranda is heading up the renewables field for our business development team. And so questions can also be directed at Saranda, who will be in San Antonio next week. But we will be sending the recording out to those that have registered and then to our general municipal list. But let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, everyone.